Friends, you've been watching these episodes where I have been talking about the tips for facing the interview at the UPSC. Today we go into the fifth episode, which is again about common blunders which are committed by candidates when facing the interviewing board. In the last episode, I spoke about some common blunders such as criticizing the government or not being aware of certain basic areas of knowledge which one is supposed to be familiar with, etc. In this episode, I go on to speak about some more such common blunders being committed by candidates. You will all be surprised to know that there are some candidates who have been caught on the wrong foot because they pleaded for the wrong cause. There is a paper on ethics, that is GS4 for the civil services examination these days. Earlier, there was no such question paper on ethics, and it was the interview which was supposed to be the forum at which the UPSC checked the ethically correct behavior of the candidate. But today, even though there is a paper on ethics, please understand that ethical correctness is another area which the UPSC checks when interviewing candidates for the civil services examination. And therefore, it's very important for you to be not only legally correct but also ethically correct. What do I mean by being ethically correct here is, well, when you look at a practical issue, you are all aware that there are civil servants who tend to misuse their official vehicle, or there are civil servants who probably have government employees working as orderlies in their houses, though it's not supposed to be done. In such cases, there could be a question asked as to why such things occur and as to why it is getting perpetuated and as to why we are not able to prevent such occurrences. The candidate could also be asked to give some suggestions as to how such occurrences can be corrected. In such a situation, it's important for the candidate to be ethically correct and also to be prompt in his response or her response to the interviewing expert. Many a time, there could be a tendency to say, well, such things do happen, and I think it's a part of the civil service as it has been for so many decades or years, and therefore nothing much can be done. And therein lies the problem. It's important. Now I come to the second point, that you should not express a sense of helplessness when facing the board. There could be a question as to how you would prevent, let's say, common theft of the Mangala Sutra, which is normally made with gold. In some states, it's quite heavy and it's made of gold and therefore very precious. And I can tell you from experience that such occurrences used to happen in the city of Chennai about 10-12 years back quite often, and there would be gangs coming from other states who would indulge in such thefts, and they would go back to their states after the occurrence, and it would be difficult to catch them, and it had to be put down, and I did put it down when I was the Home Secretary of my state. And there could also be common occurrences such as, let's say you're the SP of your district and there is harassment of girls going to college, and how would you prevent such occurrences? Now though these questions appear to be very common and very simple, it's difficult to give the right answer unless you're prepared for it at the interview. Thirdly, I come to issues which relate to stereotypes. There are common stereotypes which impact us psychologically. And I could give any number of examples, but without hurting anybody's sentiments, I think it's important for us to understand that we all think, we all visualize that certain people are made in certain ways. It's very important not to talk about such stereotyping when giving answers. Just as to say that certain people are bound to be aggressive, certain people from certain regions of India are said to be aggressive, or certain people from certain parts of India have a certain complexion, or certain people from certain parts of India have a certain dietary preference and therefore they tend to behave in a certain way. Now, these are blunders in my view, because this could hurt the chairperson or the interviewing experts psychologically and bring down your marks considerably. Again, bordering on this issue is the issue of gender. It's important to give the right answer as a civil servant. For example, let's say that the chairperson is a lady and she talks about a certain occurrence, gives you a case study and asks you for your response. Firstly, the response should cover the legal issues which have already been taken care of by the Supreme Court and the government, such as the judgment of the Supreme Court in 1997, where the famous committee called as the Vishaka Committee is supposed to be formed in all establishments where there are more than 10 employees. Subsequent to that came the Prevention of Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act 2013. And as a candidate, one has to be familiar with the basic features of the Act. Apart from talking about the legal position, it's also important to talk about one's own stand in the matter. And it's important to be ethically and practically correct in such matters. Not even an iota of gender bias will be acceptable. Again, there are certain social habits which we tend to think are taboo. For example, we generally would say that smoking is more common among men than among women, and it could be quite disturbing for a particular chairperson or a member if the candidate said that, well, since so and so belongs to a particular gender, not supposed to be smoking. Now, I don't think such an answer would be acceptable. It's better to say that these are personal matters about which a civil servant has nothing to say, in the sense these are personal habits of an individual. That would be a more correct answer rather than to say, well, this should not be done and that should not be done by certain people. Lastly, concern for the underprivileged should echo through all your answers. There could be a very simple question as to say, well, as the collector of the district, you have reserved a particular day of the week for hearing grievances of the common public. And the public have come in large numbers, and on the same day, the minister who hails from that district has also programmed a visit where he has decided to see some of the important rural development works going on in the district. In such a situation, as the collector, how would you balance the two work requirements? A, you will have to be with the minister, and B, you will also have to hear the grievances of the common public. Now, these are points on which alertness and presence of mind is very important. A wrong answer can be very costly for you, and at the same time, one can't be helpless or one can't be without an answer in such a situation. Therefore, it's very important, A, to be prepared, B, to be alert, and C, to be ethically correct, and for that a certain amount of mental training is required. We now go on to the remaining episodes with regard to the tips for the interview on subsequent days. Till then, bye. Thank you.